awesome comparison, Stephen. Thank you. Okay. So today I'm going to be talking about a story. It's called A Disappearing DevOps Architecture, a Halloween story. So the chief characters in this DevOps story, there are a few of them: the developer, the QA engineer, and the system administrator. As kind of a learning towards DevOps and moving technology forward, which at InRhythm, that's what we're trying to do, especially internally from the DevOps practice to try to see where we're going in the future. I kind of put in parentheses just from industry data and experiences, where we kind of see these positions kind of forming into. So the developer, we see at the top is kind of that chief area we see kind of, being consistent. The QA engineer looks like it's going to move more towards automation, right? Automation practices, trying to automate testing and do that efficiently, specifically to reduce the rate of defects for clients. The last piece, the system administrator, moving towards more of a development-operated, development mindset system administrator, right? So that ops engineer, that cloud infrastructure engineer, to gain that expertise and kind of take businesses to the next level. So that's where I wanted to start off there. I'm going to talk specifically about a developer, or for Halloween, I would call him more the werewolf. Coming from a development background, so for DevOps engineers, some come from the infrastructure side, some come from the development side, some are just true hybrids right from the beginning. I personally come from the development side, so my heart is as a developer, and I feel from a Halloween perspective standpoint, internally we actually spoke about this week about whether it would be a werewolf, a vampire, a witch, whatever. I think it would be the werewolf specifically because at night I think you turn into something different. When you're debugging something very complex, you get that extra tick, you get that extra energy, you turn into something a little bit different. The only one thing I would say is I've never developed under the moonlight, so that's kind of the one thing that's maybe not completely accurate there. So the werewolf silver bullet number one, something kind of coming from personal, also from a visual perspective, moving into DevOps, where you kind of see both the development and the infrastructure side, is documentation. So I know some developers do enjoy documentation, but the majority, I would say, do not. If you go into the typical README file, I would feel it's going to give the bare minimum information about how that repository is going to be working, right? It's not going to give you this elaborate long essay about how the repository is working, how it's building, how it's testing. I think from a DevOps engineer standpoint, if we had all that information, that would be wonderful. But that's usually not the case at all. So the werewolf silver bullet one there is documentation. How do we fix that? Saying solution oriented at InRhythm, right? How do we look towards fixing that? Maybe just create some strategy for documentation in terms of, okay, let's always have our build, our test, and our deployment for our artifacts so that we can do that more efficiently. The second werewolf silver bullet here, unit and functional test coverage. This is a huge one with development. So I don't know, does any developers in here, can you raise your hand? You're a developer? Can you keep your hand raised if you enjoy writing unit tests? Okay, all right. I think that's just because we have some leadership here. We might have some clients here, maybe. But from a unit functional test coverage area, that's something that from a DevOps standpoint that we're trying to drive is developers stay focused on features, focus on the features, and then anything other than that, we're not being able to deliver to our clients what we need to. We already have responsibilities for new feature content as well as bug fixes. So with unit test coverage, just try to do the best strategy we can in order to push that forward. The third one here is unit functional test results. So forget actually writing a test, but the actual test results coming out from a DevOps standpoint can be horrendous. We can see, I think we've seen, test coverages come out that are, maybe 20%, 28%. These are like things you wouldn't even pass high school if you multiply it by 2. So from that standpoint, I think that's definitely a silver bullet to work on. How do we keep our test coverage high and then our test density high from a DevOps standpoint? The fourth Werewolf silver bullet is who wrote these tests in the first place, right? So like some tests, we look at them, we don't even know what they're testing, right? So that's an issue. If we have 100 tests and we don't know what the tests are doing, we got to throw those tests out, right? Because if there's no need for them, there's no need for us to be quiet and not push that initiative forward and tell our managers, tell directors, architects, a lot of whom we have here today and are making those changes and are actually putting that forward, because if we don't know what the tests are doing, they serve no use or no purpose for us. The fifth silver bullet is treacherous comment blocks. So from a development standpoint, a treacherous comment block would be something where you're kind of taking just taking the word of the developer before you for pre-existing written code. This can be pretty dangerous because I feel that I've always had this thing in the back of my head telling me that maybe a developer before me was purposely trying to mess me up, or like just put maybe a little a wrench in things to try to misunderstand. So we kind of have an example here. So this is a treacherous comment block here. I'm gonna kind of let everybody take a look at it just for 10 or 15 seconds and see if they kind of see an area that might be wrong here. I think it's in Bash. I'm not sure if there's people in here that do scripting in Bash. But basically what this does is, I don't know if you've had the syndrome before, and this really is a nightmare, and we're talking about Halloween, so this is very fitting, is when your path variable gets messed up. So when your path variable gets messed up, it can cause some severe damage where you're really not able to do anything. So if you're in a Red Hat 6, Red Hat 7, or just a Debian-based Linux box, so basically this script, what it does is, basically at the top of the comment, it says this code should run daily, and what it actually does is it removes your .bashrc file, and then it creates a new bashrc file, and then pipes some information into there that's going to absolutely make you walking a very haunted pathway in terms of Halloween jargon. So that's moving on back to the actual disappearing DevOps architecture story. Basically, it's broken down into the extraordinary cloud, the wicked cloud, as well as the beta cloud. So the extraordinary, the wicked, the beta. So basically, at a previous position that I had been working at, we had this extraordinary cloud infrastructure we were working with. It was actually on-prem. It was an OpenStack Juno instance, and specifically, we were all sharing the same project, our development team and I. A couple positives from this that we can learn about from a technology standpoint. Not having a dependency on infrastructure is extraordinary, right? So that's something we want to drive from the infrastructure side and from the development side. From the QA side, is not having that dependency. We had these really extraordinary primed up development images. You would go in, you would see these awesome softwares like Vim. I mean, that would be from a personal opinion, because I think Vim is extraordinary, or Git, or just other softwares that are very helpful. So being able to go in and have those available to you right from the start and start working on features. Then what happened with this extraordinary cloud of ours is, if anyone's used OpenStack and sharing the same project, basically what happens is there start to become trust issues with developers, right? So you have to be very tight as a development team, and development teams are very tight in general. I would say. Sina, would you agree on that? 100%. Okay, so basically you have these really trust-based development teams, and then one time somebody deletes another person's running instance, and you have data up there. And what happens in that scenario, if you're working on 3 days of stuff, your instance gets deleted, that causes some trouble. So basically, we had a couple instances of that, and we also had a couple potential security holes that were going on. So we got together as a team. We said we were going to take this, extraordinary cloud, and we were just going to go tear it down. So then we went to this wicked cloud. And this wicked cloud that we walked into, it only had VI available. There wasn't even Vim. So if you don't like Vim, then that's kind of saying something about what's available in this cloud. You walked into the images. There's no Git installed. Like you're trying to use the Yum repository and you can't. You don't even have a Red Hat account. It's just horrible. Everything's going. It's horrendous. So basically, in this project, what I got sent out to do was go into a beta cloud. And that was specifically all to set up our CI pipeline processes. So in order to set up this CI pipeline infrastructure, I needed to update all of the dependencies with a few colleagues of mine to be able to use this new beta cloud. The problem with the beta cloud was initially it was a lot of work because there were defects everywhere. So from the infrastructure side, they were very happy to give us more space, more resources to be able to use this new OpenStack cloud. And this one was actually a Liberty version. And specifically with this cloud, we had to log all the defects, report them back. It was getting worse and worse and worse. So we had this great cloud. We went to this lesser, worse cloud, and now we're experiencing this beta cloud because of all these defects. Finally, things started turning up though. At the end, we started to set up the CI pipeline infrastructure. All was well. And then about a week and a half later, we got a call that the on-prem cloud infrastructure was decommissioned. So basically what happened was that the team that had been working on it had told our development team that this thing was just rock solid, ready to go, ready to use, ready to consume, but it wound up actually going into a state where they didn't know exactly how to bring it back up, and all of the underlying infrastructure it was controlling and the OpenStack resources that were being used for it wound up being completely wiped out. The CI pipeline infrastructure that we had laid out and worked on wound up just going poof. So that was the nightmare scenario for that. And then this is just the last slide before we pass it on to our next speaker, just going over some InRhythm, Halloween Cloud, and DevOps recap. So we went over at the beginning, and just anytime you meet to kind of take those technology advances as we can, even though this is Halloween, but to just finish with some serious points. Test coverage and test value hybrid strategy, and specifically in connection to defect reduction strategy is very critical. So not only having a large amount of tests from unit to functional to system, but making sure those are high quality tests proven to drive down the rate of defects and ultimately bring our clients more revenue, more income, so that we're able to go turn around and make better products for our clients. The second one is the essential value of cloud infrastructure in aiding a rapid highway to continuous deployment. This is something in industry that is very apparent. If you don't have a cloud infrastructure, or you're not using a cloud infrastructure, and you're trying to create a DevOps culture, you are at least 5 to 10 steps behind. And businesses that are using cloud infrastructure, both on-prem and off-prem, they're just gonna move past you if you're not able to keep up. So that one is huge. Some people like to say that cloud and DevOps are completely separate, and they're absolutely linked. The developer self-sustainability of infrastructure is something I think that I mentioned earlier. In order for us to move forward towards 2025, 2030 technologies, we need developers to be self-sustainable. And by self-sustainable, that means to have their infrastructure ready to work and not waiting 2 or 3 days to be able to start doing what they need to do or make changes. The fourth one here, ops critical innovation of new underlying on-prem infrastructure and top-tier utilization of cloud infrastructure. So let me explain that. There's 2 points there. The first one on the ops side is being able to use on-prem VMware or on-prem OpenStack efficiently for development teams, segregating off specific hardware for developers, as well as on the operations infrastructure side. And then the top tier utilization of cloud infrastructure, whether that be AWS or Azure, being able to do that consistently, but at the same time that you're growing your on-prem footprint and making sure that it's translatable. So new features like Azure Stack, for instance, or for AWS, having the ability to just forklift workloads with VMware or with IBM as well has that ability, IBM Cloud. The fifth point here, the value of clients utilizing both on-prem and off-prem as well as private public cloud strategy. This is not one-to-one. It does change in terms of what your current need case are, and I think we went over that one. And then this last one would be more from a development standpoint, which is protecting instance data during cloud development. So if you're working in cloud, whether it's in AWS or it's in OpenStack or your public or private cloud of choice, making sure that you protect your data. So that means whether it's saving locally or on AWS, there's termination protection that you could always keep on in order to make sure that the work that you're doing is always being persisted somewhere. And then this is just an InRhythm recap in moving towards new DevOps and new cloud innovation and technology. And that's about it. Thank you. And thank you for the awesome introduction.